Jabbery?
I hit record as well.
I don't know.
So hello everyone, it's been a while. Also hello to anyone who's listening. This is the first episode of the Venom Prison podcast. We don't really know where this is going to go. We're just going to chat a little bit and then see where we're going from this.
Straight in the bin.
Straight in the bin.
Yeah, so we just released Primeval. Does anyone want to say something about that?
It's out.
It's out,
Yeah, it's good.
It's out, what is it? So, re-release, demo, EP, Defy Tyrant, Primal Chaos, and 2 new songs. I mean, it's online, so if you want to check it out, I guess, go and have a look.
It's got more pinch harmonics and dive bombs than the first one, so it's better.
That is true. Technically, that means ratings should be higher.
Step up.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, so we haven't seen each other for a month now, because the last time we seen each other was when we were recording or filming or shooting the video for Slayer of Holofernes. I hope that's how you pronounce it. I don't think anyone really knows.
I don't fucking know.
It definitely is. I put it into Google Speech. It is.
Good.
Isn't that a robot talking though? It's not actually a person.
Yeah, but, you know, same
Doesn't
thing,
mean
innit?
it's wrong.
True.
What, robots can't be right now? Terminator 2.
Oh yeah, so the video shoot. That was the last time we've seen each other. It was a long drive for you guys, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a long day. It was good though.
Yeah. It was good.
It was 2 days of shooting for me, because the first day was in this Airbnb. I hope the people don't watch it, because they absolutely don't know that we were filming a video in there.
I did not know that. That's awesome. Why? What weren't you allowed to do?
Well, there wasn't that didn't want me to be there with anyone else, so no one else was allowed in the house.
So you basically had a party.
Didn't you put a paddling pool up in the house as well?
Yeah, we did, in the bathroom.
We should definitely get this behind the scenes made sooner and send it to the Airbnb email.
They were like, when I booked it, we were like, oh, you got so many good reviews. Yeah, no one else stayed here on their own before. So the wife of the guy was actually quite worried that I'm gonna fall and die or something like that. So they wanted me to send them a text in the morning when I wake up to say that I'm alive.
If they see the video, they'll think somebody's got torched in the house.
I still don't understand why they wanted you to ask if you were okay. So, like, you book accommodation and then in the morning they're like, you are still alive, right? Like, just to check. Like, you slept in my house, you're alive.
I think that's because it's like a party house, and usually people stay there with to celebrate events, because there's a pool outside and there's 6 bedrooms or something like that. So
That's where Michael Barrymore fucking stayed.
That's his house.
That's why they're ringing.
Michael Barrymore's Airbnb.
Airbnb people are generally sound though. They love you having a good time. Like that other Airbnb we stayed at ages ago. Like, she was so stoked to show us where the biscuits were.
Oh yeah, where was that again?
Was that in Newcastle?
Fuck knows.
I think it was in Newcastle.
Yeah, we played this weird festival where that band that were dressed up as Star Wars and things like that played.
Wasn't one of the members dressed as a Ferrero Rocher?
That as well.
I didn't imagine that, did I? That definitely happens.
I'm pretty sure I did. I think one of them was dressed up as like a housemaid as well.
I'm definitely sure that happened because they did the conga line all the way from like out of the venue and stuff.
I don't
So
remember.
are you talking about the Halloween show in London? Years.
No. It was Newcastle. You are right. It definitely was Newcastle.
Amputate to play that show.
Possibly, yes. I think so. It was a very like slam focused show.
Yeah.
Do you not remember it?
I remember the Airbnb. I don't remember the show.
That's
The
like
show was kind of shit.
how was the Airbnb more memorable than the Ferrero Rocher running around?
Well, it says it all, really, doesn't it?
It does say it all. If anyone's watching or listening to this, then you've gathered that must have been a great day for us.
Yeah, no disrespect to the promoter.
No,
Whoever that was.
Being real.
Oh. Right, so
what topic? So what are we covering today? Are we just chatting shit, or
we can cover quite a few things, I guess. I think there's a lot of things to mention because since we haven't been touring this year, everything we've done has been online based. So, for example, like the Officer Down cover when did we do that Officer Down cover?
May? Was it May?
May?
Yeah, sounds about right. So I mean, like, people listening, like, that is out now. If you didn't know, it's on YouTube, easy enough to find. And I think probably the most exciting part really is the fact that we've been writing through most of lockdown. Wouldn't you say? We've been writing for a good while now for album 3 before Primeval Chaos, Primeval. So I think anyone listening, that's going to be quite interesting. The fact that we have essentially almost finished record 3.
I think we pretty much perfected the art of writing over Zoom, where travel's not been possible. But
yeah, that's I think that's quite an interesting thing as well, isn't it? The fact that how we've been writing through COVID, because I know a lot of people are always going to assume that you go in a practice room and write all your songs from scratch, but that isn't the case for us, really, is it? And it never has been, really. Even when Venom Prison started, it's never been the case. We've never kind of got in a practice room and written a song from scratch. Like, maybe we tweak and people sparkle to it or add little bits, but primarily we write most of it as pre-production on our computers and stuff from home. So doing it through COVID, well, it's hard for us to all meet up if we're writing. So I think technology has been our best friend, really, hasn't it? Like just FaceTiming or Skype and kind of just sitting there with headphones and chatting and listening the best we can. But it's definitely been interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely been more of a challenge. I think it definitely sucked more before we kind of figured out that we could do that, because at first we were kind of doing our own bits. You were doing a bit of yours, I was doing a bit of mine, and then we'd have like a big long call and we'd talk through and we'd just give each other like, right, 20 seconds into this, you should do this. And then it was like, as things kind of eased off and we could start mixing again, it was actually such a fucking relief to be able to get together and do it.
It's definitely a lot harder than I actually imagined it to be, doing it completely separate, and how you miss when you write. You kind of like, it's very easy to write a whole thing on your own, but it's like you always miss what the other person contributes to something. And as soon as you do finish that song on your own, you can always hear those bits where that other person would suggest something or do something to that song.
Yeah, it was obvious the bits that, right, this is an Ash section, this is a Ben section, oh, this is actually now a Bash section.
Yeah, and
combining
I think
us together. Well, you know that, didn't you, Jeff? You were kind of like, you were able to go, oh, I kind of know which bits are which.
Yeah, I can hear your individual styles a mile off, so yeah, it's very obvious to me when I hear it. Kind of less so once you could start mixing again. It was before. I think when we first got locked down, you were writing individually, it was very obvious. And then once you got together and kind of worked on it a bit more,
Yeah, the
kind of
songs sounded
blend the
quite
styles
different
together.
as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
And once you were able to sit together, they were more like, they didn't sound like just songs that were written by different people anymore. They just sounded like Venom prison songs. Does that make sense?
And I think that was the most difficult part of, you know, kind of writing in this environment, is the fact that you do take it for granted of having that, you know, those people with you writing, and even if it's just a slight, you know, criticism or a slight bit of advice, how that just impacts the song so differently than if you write something on your own. And it's the same with like drums, for example. It's so hard because we can't be in a room together at the moment to sit with drums. It's like trying to send ideas back and forth. And to be fair, it was exactly the same with guitars, really, wasn't it? Like, you know, send ideas back and forth, and it would be like, that's not what I thought. And then, you know what I mean? Like, that is kind of how difficult it is doing it apart from people, because you just don't have that real communication. And I mean, I think we've got through it pretty well, though.
On the good note as well, by the way, because Joe has only joined the band, was it over a year ago, wasn't it?
I think it was November 2 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
So yeah,
2
almost
years?
2 years now. Yeah.
Fuck me.
Yeah.
No, 2 years
that
ago.
Kelly Pitch show was the first show I did with you guys.
Hang on a minute, I've got to do some Googling. Well, I think this is...
No,
this,
It wasn't that long
that's
ago,
true,
yeah.
that's
I mean,
true.
Damnation was a year ago.
Yeah, it's true.
holy shit.
Fuck it.
That is... Yeah.
This year
This
is
is the first stuff
this
that
year
I've
is
written
just
for,
been a
yeah.
shitter, isn't it? Really, this year is
Yeah.
just
So Joe
everything.
joined 2 years ago, and before, when you were writing, you were only relying on the program drums, and then the drums that you practiced, or we practiced all together. But now you can also send the songs to Joe so he can add his fills or whatnot. So
It actually ended up being like a mixture of mine and Ben's drums in the end.
Yeah.
Just a mixture of the two. Same with the guitars again, yeah.
But it's fucking reassuring to know that you're going to be on the next record, like not kissing your ass, but because you've obviously got a lot of practice to do. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's reassuring because I think, no disrespect to people who've been in the band before, I think just at this point where we kind of all keep leveling up instrumentally, I don't think I would have been able to play the stuff that I'd written for this record when the band first started. And I think it's just been a natural progression for everyone to step up. I don't know if you feel the same vocally, Larissa, from like the first record to your ideas now. I don't know if you'd ever thought that way. I suppose everyone's got their...
You've moved to keyboard now, Ben, for this album.
But I think that is kind of the interesting thing with this band. Like, I say this quite a lot when, you know, like interviews or anything like that, where it is interesting because Venom Prison has had a natural progression. It hasn't been that band that has just kind of started from get-go and been like, we're going to be our best self from the beginning. You know what I mean? And I think watching that natural progression in a band is way more exciting than, you know, perfection from the get-go. And I think that is most of your favorite bands who you go and listen back to their early records and you think, I did love them back then, but my God, the improvement. And I think that is why you stick with those bands. You know, you could be that band that writes the same record 50 times and then 50 years later, someone finally says, yo, you're going to write a different fucking record for once.
AC/DC.
But not to rip on them, but yeah, you have written the same record for 50 years. But yeah, I mean, it is exciting. I'm very excited for us to get in the studio, which isn't long now, isn't long at all. We can say, I guess we can say that we are starting recording this year. I'm not going to say when, but we are starting this year.
Or who would. We should probably keep that quiet too.
Yeah, we're not going to give too much away on that. Like, or we should just upload all the demos to the podcast right now.
I'll play them now. Just fucking leak it. Like, yeah.
Should we leak our own record quickly?
Oh, we should start the Venom Society.
Oh God, here we go. This podcast is going to cause beef, I swear. So let's move on to something.
Yeah, we've each got an OnlyFans, so if you go on onlyfans.com / fuck yourself.
Yeah, I think Joe's going OnlyFans.
Has
Thought
it?
about it. Wait, I had a drink in it.
Wait, he's standing up. Shit, what's he doing?
This is his debut. All right then. So whilst we're on, this is the third podcast, so I guess it is, quite unusual for us, isn't it, to do something like this? So, I mean, any funny tour stories? Because I can imagine, because we haven't played a show. Well, when was the last show we played? Not live stream.
In like a year ago. Almost.
Damnation.
That was Damnation.
Yeah, in November.
Okay, what was before Damnation?
USA.
US, yeah.
What funny happened in USA then?
I mean, everything, wasn't it? Really? I mean, the day we got there, some super friendly guy at that gas stop was asking, "Oh, y'all in a band?" The classic that you get every time. And he was really nice, and we were sort of talking to him, and he was asking, "Oh, what's your band called?" And we say, "Oh," we tell him, "Oh, Venom Prison." But like Americans often have a hard time understanding a British accent. And he's there, isn't he? He's googling.
He was looking on YouTube.
Venom
He was like, "You guys winding me up," and we're like, "No," like, and then I'm like, I think I can't remember who looked at his phone. It's like, our band's not called Pussy Prison.
It was like Venom Pussy, I think.
I remember. I remember looking over his shoulder as he was on YouTube, and I was like, "Oh my God, this guy thinks that we've been like trying to take the piss out of him, saying our band's called Venom Pussy." And I was just like, "Oh," and that was literally like day 2. I swear that was like.
I wish we were called Venom Pussy now.
Venom Pussy could have some interesting merch. But I mean, that was what, day 1 or 2? That was like.
Yeah, it was pretty early on because we started in Canada, didn't we?
Oh, and that was it as well, like, which is kind of funny. When I think it was like we were rolling up like a cigarette in the airport, and some guy was like, "You can't smoke a joint out here," and I was like looking at him and I was thinking, "What are you on about smoking? Why would I smoke a joint outside an airport when there's loads of like cops and security?" And then, as we learned then, rolling tobacco does not come easy, does it?
It certainly doesn't.
Not so.
You have to make do with those Newport Mentals. I think they were the only things I could actually tolerate. Everything.
Jeff, what was that horrible tobacco that you bought in? I can't remember where it was, but it was like some strawberry tobacco that you tried to mix with stuff, and it was like. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but that was not nice. It wasn't even tobacco. It was. Yeah, I don't know.
It was that herbal tobacco, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, what an awful time.
You also had some weed that you asked for, like you asked some people in California for weed, and they gave you some. It was really fine, and then you took one of my zip up bags that had perfume in before.
I remember that very well. I remember that very, very well.
It was like smoking potpourri.
Do you remember, like, before we went, do you remember when we had the potpourri weed, and before we would like go to bed, we would just have one outside the like motel or whatever, and it was the first night of like 5 weeks straight that all of us looked at each other halfway through and was just like, "Do you want to just put it out?" I feel so sick. I feel like I've got perfume poisoning.
Yeah, that's not nice.
But
the best thing was, though, the tour actually started, or the misadventure started on the plane, where our manager, hello Tom, has booked us flights with food, but there was no food.
that was a good time.
And then we were on the plane for like 9 hours or 8 because we were flying into Toronto, I believe, from London.
Yep.
And we had nothing to eat.
I think.
No, we had Pringles for the whole flight. I think. Was that right?
I didn't even have that because everything was quite expensive and we didn't want to spend any money. Plus, half of us are vegan, and then we couldn't really eat anything there anyway.
I think something happened though, didn't it? Because we had an unlimited.
Oh, something happened.
Something always happens. But we had like an unlimited supply of something, wasn't it? Because they were like,
No.
It's like those little pretzels.
yeah.
Yeah, the pretzels.
They were like complimentary miniature pretzels about that big.
They just felt sorry for us, so they gave us more. We were begging them for pretzels.
Yeah, I ended up like licking the packet. I was so hungry. But that was just the flight. I mean, that wasn't even where we'd started.
I left my sunglasses on that plane as well. Always got a reputation for losing my sunglasses all the time. And first plane we get on, just leave them on there.
That sounds about right, though, doesn't it? I mean, what else? I mean, off the top of my head, I always think about Vegas, just how ridiculous Vegas was in general. I
always remember that hotel.
What was
the theme park inside it?
What was the hotel again?
We stayed
like
in
a-
Circus.
That
That's the one, yeah.
The one from Fear and Loathing.
Yes, that's the one.
58,000 rooms.
How many rooms?
58,000, I think it had.
Jesus Christ.
58,000.
I remember we only had 1 or 2 key cards for the room. I think Ben had one and he was out with other people. And I had one and I went inside because I was tired and I was taking a shower. And then all of a sudden, everyone wanted to come home, couldn't find Ben. And then I was in the shower and you were calling me like, oh, I'd come down and give me the key card. I want to come inside and stuff like that. That was fucking annoying.
I was too busy gambling all of mine and then all of Jeff's money. I ran out of mine. I managed to win back Jeff's, gave that back to him. I think you stormed off, Ash, because I was too drunk and didn't want to let you up the lift or something. You stormed off. And then I thought, oh, I better go patch things up with that. Who sat on the fucking coin machine, gambling his life away? I was like, you ready to go? You're like, yeah, 10 minutes.
Where was Joe that night? Though?
It was
I
around.
think I was just going between the two. I was watching Ben. What you were playing roulette? Yeah, I was watching Ben and roulette, and then I went.
I got so
on
lost
the
trying to
shop
find the room. I ended up pissing in one of the hallways. So drunk, couldn't find my way back to the room, so just
Honestly,
pissed in
I
the hallway.
forgot about that.
I thought I've seen that in the movie, but then I remembered that you pissed against someone's door. I think it was one of the bands that we were on tour with. It was their door.
I don't think it was.
I don't think it
No.
was.
I don't think he was even on the right floor.
Yeah, I definitely remember finding you in that hallway. There was so much. That night was weird. I just couldn't get over the fact that you could just go to a shop outside, buy a load of cans, go back into the casino. Because I think we just felt weird about it, didn't we?
We were sat at the roulette table, weren't we? Just like drinking cans, smoking at the table. It's like, this is weird as fuck.
Yeah, but I think we embraced it. It was good.
I thought I'd hate Vegas, and it was amazing.
Yeah. So what was before the US tour?
There was some August dates with. We played some shows with Dire Is Murder and Sea Space Cowboy in Germany.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I remember. They were all those shows were really good.
They were good.
All those
Yeah.
shows were really good. And before that would have been the Fit for an Autopsy tour.
I think so.
Or was there any festivals last year?
What
Glastonbury?
was the one in oh Christ?
Well, we played one in Switzerland. It was.
Yeah.
And there was Brutal Assault too, right?
Yes.
So
Oh,
Go
yeah, that was
altitude as
lovely.
well.
Glastonbury as well.
Yeah.
What, Glastonbury was last year?
Yeah.
Really?
No.
No.
I mean,
Yeah, it was. It was last year.
I think it might have been. This year has literally felt like it's made every year feel like it's about 5 years
Like
away.
this year was cancelled. I had tickets to go to this year, and it was last year we played.
That's wild. Seeing Craig Charles there, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did. We
Remember
did.
that insane cramp I got after Glastonbury set?
Put your foot on a massive block of ice.
After which set? The first or the second one?
The first one, like like my foot was like bending itself in half, and like one of the crew guys just went and brought an ice block, and like the cramp was so bad it hurt less just to have my foot inside and it must have been in it for like 15 minutes because my foot literally made like a hole in this giant ice cube, and I was just sat there still in pain, and it was nothing to do with the ice block. That was weird.
Do you remember the food in Glastonbury?
It sucked.
The
Awful.
catering. It was
Terrible.
fucking
Glastonbury
gross.
Festival, you've got all that fucking money. Feed people, you stingy cunt.
Oh,
I ended up
that,
staying for the whole weekend. Like most of the food there was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, that's the food that you buy, but not the catering. The
oh
catering
yeah.
was disgusting.
Wasn't it like Thai curry with like a literal huge garlic or ginger in it?
No,
I remember a lot of cabbage. Yeah.
The vegetables that were in that Thai curry was green Thai curry, I believe. And that was the vegan meal. And the vegetables were just like the end bits of like broccoli and cauliflower. Like,
Do you reckon we just got last serving?
could be, I don't know.
It does sound like it, doesn't it?
It did feel like prison food.
Did we
from
play on the Friday?
Oh yeah, we played on the Friday. Maybe they probably just didn't like us. They probably just said, "Oh, that Venom prison band's coming through. Make sure you put on their dinner tickets so they get the ends of the veg."
Yeah, fucking Idol's got a 5-course fucking meal.
It is a bit of a weird one, that festival. Like seeing Gajira turning up to play after us, like the look on their face, they were like, what the fuck have we signed up for here? This is a mess.
I remember them stepping around on stage when we were playing, trying to set up their fucking lights.
Yeah, fucking. They tried to get like 4 Arctic trucks or 2 Arctic trucks. How many was it?
Yeah, it was definitely a couple.
But I mean, if anyone knows Glastonbury, it's in a field which logistically, taking an Arctic lorry or truck doesn't seem very logical, does it?
It's difficult to drive a transit van around, let alone a big fucking bus.
Do you remember Voidfest?
I was just about to fucking make it out there.
Voidfest should always be brought up all the time. What a
Joe, were you at Voidfest?
No,
No.
that was Joe. That was our first drummer.
It was the other Joe.
Be grateful, Joe, that you didn't miss anything on that one.
That
You-
was fucking amazing. I love that show. That was so good.
I don't know what it was. It was just awesome. It was just like unlimited beer,
In a
hash,
forest in Germany.
hash and weed when you arrive, and a high possibility of being struck by lightning.
Yeah, there was a storm that day, a massive one, like just all over South Germany.
We got pulled out of the campsite by a tractor.
Yeah, because we got stuck, and they had to turn all the power off because it wasn't safe, and like things were like flying about.
Ash got hit by a
The
tent.
rain was
That was all.
the rain was so fucking heavy. I remember like we were all just drenched.
Do you remember just like me, just taking a piss in the woods and this random tent just flew into me?
I remember you telling me about it. I wish I'd seen it.
It was the most weirdest thing that's ever happened in my life. Like I didn't even react to it. I just was like, "Oh, I've never been hit by a tent whilst taking a piss before."
And then that was the time when we left it after we got pulled out by the truck and did the delayed set, and a couple of us probably had anxiety attacks because of the weather and thought we'd die.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
happened.
You remembered Steve remembered that he bought a blue flashing light from a previous German gas stop, and we thought to get out because it was still there were people walking in all the footpaths. So didn't Steve put the flashing blue light? Not that we were impersonating to be a police person, but yeah, it got us out. But people were literally trying to run for their lives up, and I think a good.
I remember that.
They completely. We see these 2 guys just like turn around, see the blue flashing light, shit
I
themselves,
can run.
ran, stacked it, face down in the mud. Brilliant.
Oh, I love the fact as well. He's probably thinking, shit, I've got so much weed on me, run. And we probably got just the same amount in the van with us. But, I mean, yeah, there was a Fit for an Autopsy tour last year, 2019. That was, I think that was probably the best UK tour we've done.
That was really good.
Was that your first proper tour with us, Joe?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was.
Yeah, it was, because it was a lot. I remember Joe did K Pit, and then it was a long string of tours, wasn't it? It was like Fit for an Autopsy into Europe, into America.
Yeah, that Fit for an Autopsy one was definitely good. Like all the bands, everybody on that tour was sound.
Reaction-wise as well, I think that was probably our best UK type, like, tour that we've done in UK as such.
Yeah, definitely, it was fun.
Yeah, I think it was. And I mean, like, all the bands were like cool.
But Europe as well was like one of the best for us.
I think that year, I think this is why this year has really annoyed me so much, because last year was, so good in all the things that we did, like ending it on Damnation, which was awesome. It was kind of like such high expectations going into 2020 to do like, Download Australia, Southeast Asia, and then doing Parkway with Hatebreed and playing through like massive venues in Europe, and then Wembley in UK. And then somehow we got to this point where we're doing a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we were literally like 3 days away from flying to Australia when everything got cancelled. It was very close.
Yeah.
So we could have ended up flying and then got fucking stuck there for months, which I personally don't think would be too bad.
I think it was just like, I think it was kind of like the reality, like, I know it's such a cliche thing to say, but the reality of watching it unfold, where it was like one thing got postponed and then it was like, okay. And then you wake up the following day and the next thing got postponed. And it was literally like a daily thing, wasn't it? I remember it was just like, I can just even like remember the start of this year, like every week we had like a announcement for this is postponed. And
it's like, it just didn't really feel real. Like even like a couple of weeks before it got cancelled, you were like, it's not really going to affect us that much. It's all going to blow over. And then
here we are doing a podcast, like I said. But I mean, I think we do need to be optimistic. We have actually been very productive this year when you think about it. Like, we've been trying extra hard to make sure that we're staying busy, whether it's writing. And I know a lot of people always assume Primeval was a lockdown idea, but it was actually done in December before lockdown. So we are quite grateful. Yeah. I think it was just very good timing that Primeval was done and ready whilst we went into lockdown, so we could kind of start,
People can add that to their conspiracy theory lists. Venom Prison released COVID so they could do a re-release and not have to tour it.
That could be true. That could be true, but I'm not going to say whether it's true or not. You have to...
Well, the other theory is that Borat is patient zero. So.
Yeah, that is true. Has anyone watched the new Borat film yet?
Load of shit. No, it's all so staged. Like, I don't know.
I definitely prefer the first one, but there are some good moments in the new one. My favorite thing is that Kazakhstan, so the travel minister of Kazakhstan, or whatever his title is, he's actually started campaigns about Kazakhstan travel, and he used a Borat slogan.
Yeah, it's like boosted before COVID. It boosted, like the last Borat film, kind of boosted tourism in Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Did it really?
Apparently so.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite clever of them to just go with it and use Borat.
Yeah.
And just be like, very nice.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely works, because you think about when the first Borat film came out, how many people do you know that mentioned Kazakhstan in their life? Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, it is true, isn't it? And I think at least it's kind of like I mean, I wouldn't say it's very cultural the way that he's presented it, but it's still.
Well, I don't even think that he filmed it in Kazakhstan. I think it was somewhere in Romania that he filmed it, and it's like nothing like that. Obviously, it's just satire, which a lot of people don't really understand.
I think that the first one was definitely funnier, but
Yeah.
Now everybody knows who Sacha Baron Cohen is, so it's like you know most of it's staged. It's like if you don't know who it is, like you've got to be.
Yeah.
I think it was like kind of like the moments where like he was kind of having to come out of the Borat character all the time, and I felt like the funny bits were funny, but I did also feel the bits that were trying to be extremely funny were just pushing it a little bit too much, and it felt really forced at points. But what were we talking about before Borat?
Tours.
Oh, tour. What, the thing that doesn't happen?
Yeah.
I mean, like we were saying, we did announce. I guess we can talk about that tour that we did announce. I mean, we did say we would be very transparent and be very honest with. We don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I mean, from our standpoint, it's probably better to just let you know that we are planning it and that package will happen at some point.
At some point later in the year, that package
that's what we
will
said.
happen.
That's what we said when we announced the tour, because that was quite important for us.
I think that is, I agree. I think we just needed to make sure that people were aware that we are planning things in the background constantly. And it's not like we're going to let this year determine whether our band can survive or not. So I think that's why it's been really important for us to keep as busy as possible, you know?
The thing as well is that this tour that we announced for next year was actually supposed to happen this year in October.
Originally, yeah. That's quite wild to think of. Right. But I mean, I think looking at a lot of things on the internet in the last couple of weeks, you see how bands are going into like either breaking up or going into a hiatus. And it's kind of like, you got to think to yourself that there are ways of adapting to this. Like, I think bands in general are a little bit behind in not utilizing technology as much as they should be. Because you've got to think about the fact that, like, I always say this and I don't know why, but the Fortnite Travis Scott show is probably the best thing that's ever happened on technology. That was amazing. Yeah, it was incredible. And I think that just completely showed the world that the technology is there for us to use. Like, for example, the Officer Down cover was done from everyone's room that they're probably sat in right now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I think there is definitely ways of getting around this. Code Orange seem to be very active. Yeah, they have another live stream on Saturday. I believe so. I have seen stuff be like announced and posted around, but I'm not sure exactly when. But they're a prime example. They were one of the first bands, like heavy bands, to actually do a live stream. Yeah, I just think that is the way that music needs to be for the next year or so. Like, doing a live stream, like especially like the Bloodstock one, for example, like it is different playing to no one. But when I logged in, when they did finally stream it, it was amazing to see like 1,100 odd people watching it. You know what I mean? And it's like, you do a tour and there's not 1,100 people at your shows every night. So I do think the trade-off is definitely there. Yeah, definitely. And the people were able to actually watch it over the whole weekend. So even if you missed the set, you could still watch it. I find it really interesting, like the way music's going to have to adapt to technology, because it seems like, I know touring is like everyone's focus point in music all the time, but I don't generally think that is completely necessary 100% all the time, because you've got to think about like a lot of these projects that people have done who aren't touring bands, and they're still doing it. So they've obviously been using technology and marketing for years and years and years. But I think now it's the point where everyone has to learn to adapt to that and find ways of marketing their band and just creating music. Like, I don't think there needs to be more than that. When touring comes back, obviously, let's tour and do stuff. But I don't think it's a big enough reason to finish bands, if you know what I mean. Like, I have been seeing a lot more recently. Like, who was that huge band?
That band's actually broken up because of it.
Yeah, quite a few now.
Who?
Like some big names. Like, I can't remember what they're called. I will look now.
I feel like if you're a band who have quit now, you must have been on the verge of getting to that stage anyway.
Yeah, like it just doesn't really make sense. And I think like even, you know, new bands and smaller bands, it's like they can just keep recording and recording and recording until it gets to the point where they establish a name for themselves. And then when, you know, shows come back, it's not like you're going to be the band that no one knows anymore.
I think when it eventually comes back, the music scene is going to come back a lot bigger and stronger.
Yeah, I think people have missed it a lot, haven't they? Like,
yeah,
I don't know his name. I wish I knew his name, but I know he likes Venom Prison, but I see him post on Facebook quite a lot. He's from America, and ever since COVID hit America, he's been putting all the money that he would have spent buying a ticket for a show in a jar. And he's like currently on something like $1,600 or something. And once shows come back, he keeps doing like little videos saying that he wants to kind of like spend it all on merch and shows and stuff when music comes back. And I was like, that's cool to see. It's nice to know he's optimistic about it, you know?
It's cool that people recognise that people aren't touring and they're still supporting those bands, buying merch, buying records anyway. Like, it's definitely appreciated more than ever before now.
Yeah, like I think perfect example is when we put up that, you know, that post saying that, you know, we've got a lot of merch that was planned for all these tours that we got coming up. And like the amount of people that, you know, bought something and helped us out, and seeing so many other bands say that fans of theirs have done the same as well, it's very reassuring.
Kind of essential to a lot of bands keeping ticking over, really, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
It's like you'd be fucked without people doing that.
But I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it. And I think you are right. When touring comes back, I think it's going to be a lot. But the only thing that I always kind of say to myself is there going to be a massive oversaturation of shows and people can't afford to go to all of it?
Every tour is going to happen at the same time.
That's what I think.
I mean, there's only so many venues. Like with a lot of venues closing down, you're not going to have.
Yeah, I mean, also if you have a good agent, they're gonna know when everyone is on tour and when people aren't. So
have any venues in Bristol closed?
I don't know. I think like the Exchange got one of the government grants to keep afloat. Not sure what's going on with the Fleece. I know the Exchange have managed to. I think they were quite close to going under, but managed to save it.
It's mad, like how these venues are like getting to the point where it's like they are struggling and on the brink of just closing, and it's almost like we've just kind of like sat and watch it happen in 2020 unfold month by month, like just things declining for like that side of the industry.
I mean, it was slowly happening before all this, like just with landlords building flats nearby and then being forced to close because of like noise restrictions, and then this has just been kind of a final nail in the coffin for a load of people.
Yeah, I mean, once music comes back, once shows come back, people are just going to have to support it more than ever, really, to kind of build it back up again.
Now that we're talking about live music and like music in general, I'm just wondering, how have you guys like gotten into heavy music in general? I think I'd like to ask Joe first.
I actually got into heavy music when I started skateboarding, and a guy I knew from school, Josh Saunders, was back in like the LimeWire days. He'd downloaded a System of a Down album, and we're just around his house skating in his back garden, and ever since then I've just gone down that road, really. Went from System of a Down. I think the next band I really enjoyed was Job for a Cowboy, back in like the Instrument of the Machine days. And yeah, it just grew from there pretty much.
It shows me and Joe are a similar age, because it sounds exactly the same as me, really. Like, definitely revolved around skateboarding. And do you know what? I'd never really listened to System of a Down. Never really listened to them properly. I'm sure, like, you know this. I'm sure it was when we're in the van and I listened to which album is it that people like?
Toxicity.
Yeah,
probably.
Listen, I literally sound like such a stranger now saying that, don't I? I was just like, System of the Down, who are they? But I mean, it wasn't much different. Like, it was probably like, you know, Slipknot, Papa Roach, like all that pretty much, but I didn't really like Korn either.
I never got into Korn specifically either.
Nah, I don't know what it was. I never got into Korn. And then I think, to be fair, I remember my old man gave me the first Slipknot CD, obviously copied, and he printed the cover off and everything, which the ink was definitely running out. So it was just a faded fake copy of Slipknot self-title.
Did he also stick the paper on the actual CD?
Yeah, Slipknot, if you're watching this, don't sue my dad, please. But yeah, I think that's pretty similar for a lot of people around that age, I think. But
yeah,
I was very lucky, and I'm sure like Ben can definitely confirm this. Like, having TJs was a blessing, to have the amount of shows and tours coming through, and including like Le Pub at the same time.
It was pretty much every weekend at one point. If there wasn't a show at TJ's, there'd be a show at the pub. And if there wasn't a show there, you had Welsh Club, you had the Barfly back in the day, South Wales, and then like you kind of had like that little triangle of shows between South Wales, Bristol, Swindon, occasionally Birmingham. They had their thing going on too. I think my old band, mine and Jeff's old band, we played our first show in Birmingham. Well, I don't think Jeff was in at that point, but yeah.
My first show was Glasgow.
Yeah, I remember now. But like, yeah, it was a good scene, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, I think like I'm very lucky to have that amount of venues and that amount of shows about 10 minutes from my front door at the time.
Well, what was the scene like for you, like, though, when you were first getting into? I don't think I've ever asked you what it was like when you first getting into going to shows.
What, in Chelmsford?
Yeah, was there a scene where, like, when you or did you have to travel?
Yeah, I never played. If I played a show in Chelmsford, I'd play to a crowd of pretty much zero. We'd always have to. Up north is where we'd have to travel to most. Like drive 4 hours and then get like a tenner, and then try 4 hours back. Yeah.
We've all
There was
been
no
there.
scene where I was.
Yeah, I remember before I played a show, like this was like in a band years and years ago, and the guy was like, "Oh, I haven't really got much money to give you." So I think the show was in Hull or something like that, and he was like, "I haven't got enough to pay you, but it's 20 quid," and it was like a Pizza Hut. All right, and it was just like, "Can you not buy us the Pizza Hut and just give us the money from that?" And it was just somehow that was like a deal that he wouldn't break. He was like, "No, it has to be £20 and a pizza." And so I can definitely say those days were fun, weren't they?
I remember it was actually before I joined my first band, and I was like hanging out with these people, and they played a show. I lived in Germany because that's where I grew up, and they were playing a show somewhere near Hamburg. So we had to get a train from like Düsseldorf or Duisburg all the way up to Hamburg because no one had a car and no one was driving. And if you take like a normal train, it would take you probably like 8 hours on the train to get there. And when we got there, it was a cross-punk band. They had 2 vocalists, and one of them was like a massive drug addict. So they were playing in this squat, and I was selling merch for them. And obviously everyone there was like a PC cross-punk. And all of a sudden, one of the vocalists just started like taking all his clothes off. And he was just stood there completely naked. And it was very bizarre. And it resulted in one of the band members quitting. So the vocalist that wasn't the drug addict, no, the one that wasn't naked, he then went on to play bass, and then they just let me join. So it was the guy who used to take his clothes off and me on vocals.
And then in 2018, he played as a Ferrero Rocher in a slam band in Newcastle.
It's always a crash band, though, isn't it? It's like they're full of fucking revolutionary ideas, but they can't get their own fucking shit together to stay sober for more than 10 minutes. Always. Yeah,
it was pretty fucked. I've actually received some news a couple of years ago that the bassist, who also used to be a vocalist before, he committed suicide. And
shit.
So he definitely wasn't a Ferrero Rocher in a slam band in 2018.
No, he wasn't. Wow. But yeah, it was pretty sad because he always suffered with like mental health issues. And he was gay, and he was living with his partner, and then I think they split up, and he committed suicide.
It's a mad world, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a mad world. But I mean, what about Jeff, Mike, whatever? What about you?
I mean, I kind of got into like punk when I was quite young through my dad, like him just lending me his like Stiff Little Fingers, and Sex Pistols records, The Clash, stuff like that. So that's really how I got into guitar music before anything else. And then I guess probably when I was about 11 or 12, like hanging out with my mates, and then their older brothers kind of playing like early Pantera stuff. That's pretty much how I got into it. And then just kind of playing guitar and jamming with mates, and just went from there, really.
What about you, Ben?
I don't know really what came first, whether it was punk, metal, hip hop, electronic music. It was everything. Like kind of a loser. Well, not a loser, but I mean, my first music was all classical stuff. Before I got into, I think the first heaviest band I think I ever listened to was Critopsy, and not even knowing, because I think someone I knew that I liked piano, and that song Phobophile has that piano intro, and they were telling me I'd probably like it. And I just remember hearing that piano intro into that Trempic riff, and it's still one of the fucking heaviest intros to this day. Like, you can find me a better intro with a heavier riff like after that is sick. But I think it was probably AFI was an early sort of punk band, and then like for me, I got into heavy metal, and then it was like I got quite involved in the animal rights movement at the time. And I met people who were saying, "Oh, I heard you're into metal. Did you know there's like metal bands that sing about animal liberation and animal rights stuff?" I was like, "No, I didn't know that." And then like you meet the bands like Undying, Prayer for Cleansing, and then that kind of opened doors into like the hardcore scene. So it was just pretty sick to hear metal riffs, but actually talk about stuff I gave a fuck about, rather than just like
I think
gore and fucking nonsense I got no interest in.
I think that's how it was for me as well, especially like liking metal before hardcore was like finding that transition of bands that were hardcore that had that metallic influence is kind of what won me over, because it was definitely like You For Today or whatever wasn't a band that I was like, you know, jumping up and down about. It was bands like Bleeding Through and, you know, Jericho, for example.
Yeah, I think you can recognize the importance of those bands in like the whole musical history. But yeah, I think like you, I've always been drawn more towards actual, I don't know, I don't want to put it down, but just like, you know, tighter musicianship, more intricate stuff. Like there's something cool about barely being able to play your instrument and still pulling off a band, for sure. I mean, that's the whole ethos and the beauty of sort of punk and DIY. You just do what you can. If you can play 3 chords, then you can write a song. But yeah, I think we probably all gravitated more towards.
Joe, is that the fucking Brutal Assault cup?
It is. Like, I just use it all the time. It's a nice size. It's a pint size.
A nice size, a pint size.
It's plastic, so it's easy to wash up. It's just, yeah.
Was that just left? Was that just left there from the Q&A, and you've just had a bit of water left in it?
Yeah. I mean,
all right.
What else do you need?
What else do you need? That's the statement of 2020. What else do you need?
Thanks everyone for tuning in. This was episode 1 of the Venom Prison podcast. We're gonna come back with another episode. We're gonna have some different themes and guests coming up as well. So tune in.
And also be sure to check out our merch store, www.venomprison.com.